An elderly man, 69 years old, walks into a luxury car dealership, Ferrari, wearing beach clothes, floral board shorts and worn-out flip-flops. He calmly walks through the opulent air-conditioned showroom, which contrasts sharply with the street heat of a major metropolis. Ignoring the discrepancy of his appearance, he stops and tells the salesman he wants to buy all three vehicles on display: an F8, a Portofino, and an 812 Superfast. The statement provokes scandalous laughter from the lead salesman, who, along with an ambitious colleague and the store manager, decides to humiliate the visitor. If this story caught your interest, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching from. We'll continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll hear all day. The sun was punishing Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills that July afternoon. The asphalt seemed to melt under the 95-degree heat as executives in suits and ties hurried from one mirrored building to another, checking expensive watches and talking on their phones. Among the various luxury shops adorning the avenue, Beverly Hills Ferrari stood out. The imposing facade, covered in tempered glass and brushed aluminum, displayed the iconic black prancing horse on a yellow background. The air-conditioned interior maintained a pleasant temperature, in stark contrast to the suffocating heat outside. Three cars gleamed in the main showroom: a vibrant red F8, a metallic blue convertible Portofino, and an imposing yellow 812 Superfast. Richard "Rich" Harrison, the lead salesman, proudly polishing his Salesman of the Year badge, adjusted the knot of his Italian tie while observing his reflection in the F8's hood. Beside him, Tyler Morgan, the youngest and most ambitious salesman on the team, compulsively organized catalogs on a marble table. In the glass-walled office at the back, Edward Vance, the store manager, spoke on the phone, sporting a watch that tried hard to pass as a genuine Patek Philippe. "That new Porsche Dr. Patricia Collins got is a beauty, isn't it?" commented Tyler, while adjusting the pamphlets for the third time. Richard smiled disdainfully. "A beauty? That's an entry-level car. It says a lot about her limits. A true Ferrari client doesn't buy a basic Porsche like that." "But she's a renowned plastic surgeon, has a clinic in Bel Air," Tyler argued, confused. "My dear boy, there are clients, and there are clients," Richard philosophized, running a silk handkerchief over his suit sleeve. "Our target is billionaires, not millionaires." That's when the automatic doors opened with a discreet hiss, briefly letting in the street heat along with an unusual figure. A simple-looking man with his 69 well-lived years entered the sophisticated environment. He wore worn-out floral board shorts, a basic white t-shirt, and Havaianas flip-flops worn down by use. He carried a worn-out nylon backpack and had the tanned skin of someone who spent a lot of time outdoors. The shock was instantaneous. Richard and Tyler exchanged stunned glances, while Edward quickly ended his call and came out of his office, alarmed by the unexpected presence. "Good afternoon," said the gentleman with a serene smile, walking calmly through the showroom as if he were at a local farmer's market. His gaze carefully scanned each of the vehicles on display. The awkward silence was broken by Richard, who approached with a forced smile. "Can I help you, sir? The pharmacy is on the next block." The man didn't seem fazed. "I'm interested in the cars." "The cars?" Richard repeated with a slightly mocking tone. "These are Ferraris, sir. I think you might be looking for the used car lot that's a few blocks down." "No, I'm not mistaken," the elderly man replied calmly. "I'm here to buy. In fact, I want to take all three models on display." The statement provoked scandalous laughter from Richard, who looked to his colleagues for complicity. Edward, now beside him, also smiled condescendingly. "All three?" the manager asked sarcastically. "You want to take all three cars we have here?" "Yes," the man confirmed without changing his serene expression. "The red one, the blue one, and the yellow one. They are very beautiful." Richard, Edward, and Tyler formed a semicircle around the visitor, like predators surrounding easy prey. "Do you have any idea what these vehicles cost?" Edward questioned, crossing his arms to show off his fake Patek. "Just to clarify, the F8 is about $750,000, the Portofino around $600,000, and the 812 Superfast nearly $1 million. We are talking about almost $2.4 million in total." "I know exactly how much they cost," the man replied. "I read about them before coming." Edward took a step forward, assuming an intimidating posture. "Sir, we have a strict policy of verifying financial capacity. We don't like to waste time with those who obviously cannot afford these prices." "And how do you know I can't pay?" the elderly man asked, still maintaining his calm. Richard intervened. "Look at you. With all due respect, you're in board shorts and $10 flip-flops in a Ferrari dealership. I doubt you could even afford the tires." The man took a deep breath before answering, "Are you here to sell cars or to judge customers' clothes?" The question caused a momentary silence, quickly broken by Edward. "We are here to sell to those who can buy. If you are genuinely interested, we need proof of income and assets. Otherwise, I must kindly ask you not to waste our time." The gentleman looked at each of them for a long moment. Then he calmly removed the backpack from his shoulders and pulled out a worn leather wallet. From inside, he took out a black metal rectangle, an American Express Centurion card, the legendary black card, known for its virtually unlimited limit and extreme exclusivity. The sight of the card caused a brief moment of shock, quickly disguised by Edward. "That doesn't prove anything. It could be borrowed or even fake. We need bank statements, proof of residence in a wealthy neighborhood." At that exact moment, the automatic doors opened again. An imposing woman of about 50, wearing an impeccably cut women's suit, entered the dealership. Elizabeth Monroe, the regional director for Ferrari North America, was not scheduled to visit the store that day. With 25 years dedicated to the brand, her experienced gaze immediately grasped what was happening, a customer being mistreated by her team. While the salesman paled upon recognizing her, Elizabeth walked directly to the man in board shorts and flip-flops, completely ignoring her employees. "Good afternoon, sir. I'm Elizabeth Monroe, Regional Director for Ferrari. How can I help you today?" The man smiled serenely as he greeted Elizabeth. "Good afternoon, ma'am. I was just explaining to your employees that I wish to purchase the 3 vehicles on display." Richard stepped forward, trying to regain control of the situation. "Director Monroe, we were just verifying the financial conditions of the customer. Standard procedure, as you yourself implemented." Elizabeth shot a glacial look at Richard, silencing him instantly. Turning back to the man in flip-flops, she smiled with genuine cordiality. "I understand you wish to purchase 3 of our models. That is an excellent choice. Would you like to accompany me to our VIP lounge to discuss the details with the privacy you deserve?" "It would be a pleasure," the man replied, following her. Richard tried one last intervention. "Director, I can handle the sale, as I am the lead salesman and—" "You've handled enough for today, Richard," Elizabeth cut him off sharply. "Please arrange for coffee and water in our VIP lounge immediately." As they walked to the exclusive room, Edward and Tyler exchanged apprehensive glances. The dealership's VIP lounge was an area reserved for the most important clients, decorated with relics from Ferrari's history, including a steering wheel autographed by Michael Schumacher and historical photographs of the Maranello factory. Red Italian leather armchairs completed the exclusive ambiance. As soon as the door closed, Elizabeth turned to the man with a sincere look. "I apologize for my team's behavior. It is unacceptable." The man smiled. "Actually, I dressed like this on purpose. It was a test." Elizabeth raised her eyebrows, intrigued. "A test?" "Yes," he confirmed, sitting comfortably in the armchair. "Let me introduce myself properly. I'm Arthur Jenkins, founder of Jenkins Construction." Recognition was immediate in Elizabeth's eyes. Jenkins Construction was one of the largest construction companies in the state, responsible for building shopping malls, hospitals, and skyscrapers in several major cities. "It's a pleasure to meet you in person, Mr. Jenkins," Elizabeth said, genuinely surprised. "Your reputation precedes you." Arthur made a humble gesture with his hand. "I prefer that people don't recognize me. It allows me to see their true character." He paused, looking at the closed door. "Like that of your salesman. I want to tell you a story if you'll allow me," Arthur continued, leaning back. "I was born on the outskirts of LA in Compton, back when it was considered one of the most dangerous places in the world. My mother washed clothes for others, and my father, when he was sober, worked as a construction laborer. At 14, I dropped out of school to work in construction. There was no choice. It was either that or we'd go hungry." Elizabeth listened attentively, sensing the depth behind those simple words. "At 19, he continued, I was a laborer on a mansion build in the Trousdale Estates. One day, while carrying bags of cement, I saw the owner arrive in a yellow Ferrari Testarossa. I remember it like it was today. He stopped, looked at the work with indifference, and went into his temporary house while the mansion was being finished. At that moment, I made a promise to myself. One day, I would buy 3 yellow Ferraris, one for each child I dreamed of having. Arthur opened his worn backpack and took out an old photo, creased at the corners from being handled so much. He showed it to Elizabeth. In it, a thin young man, dirty with cement, smiled next to the parked yellow Ferrari. A co-worker took this photo secretly. I've carried it with me for 50 years. That's an incredible story, Elizabeth commented, visibly touched. I worked hard, Arthur continued. I saved every penny possible. At 25, I got a loan to buy my first truck for delivering materials. At 30, I had a small building supply store. At 35, I founded Jenkins Construction with 3 employees. Today, we have over 800 collaborators. He paused, looking through the VIP room window into the main showroom, where the 3 salesmen were talking nervously. You know, Elizabeth, during all these years, I never changed my habits. I still live in the same neighborhood, in a better house now, of course. I still have coffee at the corner diner and wear my Havaianas. I don't see the point in showing off. Elizabeth nodded, understanding. That's admirable, Mr. Jenkins. I turned 69 yesterday, he revealed. My 3 children threw a surprise party. My grandchildren were there, my friends of 5 decades, some employees who have been with me from the beginning. That's when I decided it was time to fulfill my promise. He took another photo from his wallet. 3 smiling young adults at a party next to a gray-haired man who looked like him. My children. Lucas, the eldest, is an engineer and took over the technical direction of the company 5 years ago. Mark, the middle one, is the financial guy, graduated in economics and multiplied our assets with smart investments. Ryan, the youngest, is the creative one, an award-winning architect who revolutionized our designs. They sacrificed a lot while I was building the company. It's time to give back. So the cars are for them, Elizabeth concluded. Yes, 1 for each. And I want them delivered on the company's anniversary in a month. Elizabeth smiled, but her expression soon turned serious. Mr. Jenkins, I need to be honest with you. Those 3 salesmen out there are a chronic problem for us. How so? We've received several complaints about them for discriminating against customers based on appearance. Last month, we lost the sale of 2 vehicles to a young tech entrepreneur because she showed up in jeans and a t-shirt. Despite several training sessions and warnings, they persist in this elitist behavior. Arthur stroked his chin, thoughtful. I see. In fact, Elizabeth continued, leaning forward with a determined glint in her eye, I see an opportunity here to teach a definitive lesson, if you're willing, of course. I'm listening, Arthur replied with a knowing smile. We can do this. While Elizabeth detailed her plan, in the main showroom, the 3 salesmen speculated nervously. Edward compulsively adjusted his fake Patek. Richard flipped through a catalogue pretending indifference, and Tyler bit his lip, worried. Do you think she's going to fire us? Tyler whispered. Director Monroe has a reputation for being ruthless. Relax, Richard replied with false confidence. That old man can't afford anything here. The director will realize that and send him away politely. But what about the black card? Tyler insisted. That looked pretty real. A black card means nothing, Edward cut in. It could be borrowed. It could be a company card. Maybe he's a driver for someone important and is just here checking prices. The VIP room door suddenly opened. Elizabeth came out with a neutral expression, followed by Arthur, who maintained the same serene look he had when he entered. Attention, please, Elizabeth announced loudly. I want all employees gathered in the main showroom immediately. In minutes, the 12 dealership employees formed a semicircle in front of her, from the receptionist to the coffee staff. The 3 salesmen strategically positioned themselves at the back, trying to go unnoticed. Ladies and gentlemen, Elizabeth began authoritatively, I want to introduce you to Mr. Arthur Jenkins, founder and president of Jenkins Construction. A murmur went through the group. Several employees immediately recognized the name. Mr. Jenkins came to our dealership today with the intention of purchasing 3 vehicles, the F8, the Portofino, and the 812, super fast, totaling approximately $2.4 million. The employee's wide eyes alternated between the simple man in board shorts and flip-flops and the three luxury cars on display. Richard turned visibly pale. Unfortunately, Elizabeth continued with a sharp tone, Mr. Jenkins did not receive the service he deserved. She turned to the back of the room, where the three salesmen were trying to hide. Richard, Edward, Tyler, please come forward. Reluctant and visibly uncomfortable, the three advanced under the curious gazes of their colleagues. Richard maintained an arrogant expression, trying to hide his nervousness. Edward adjusted his tie compulsively, while Tyler looked like he was about to faint. These gentlemen, Elizabeth pointed to the trio, demonstrated behavior today that goes against all our brand's values. Allow me to share with you what happened. With surgical precision, Elizabeth described the treatment Arthur received when he entered the store. She quoted verbatim the offensive phrases used by each of the salesmen, provoking looks of disapproval from the other employees. With every repeated word, the three seemed to sink further into the floor. Look at you. With all due respect, you're in board shorts and $10 flip-flops in a Ferrari dealership. I doubt you could even afford the tires. Elizabeth repeated Richard's words with calculated coldness. That's what our salesman of the year said to one of the biggest entrepreneurs in the construction industry in this state. Richard stared fixedly at his Italian shoes, unable to face his colleagues. Mr. Jenkins is not just the founder of a company with an annual revenue of over $100 million, Elizabeth continued. He is also an example of overcoming adversity, having started as a construction laborer at 14 and built his empire with hard work and integrity. The director paused dramatically, observing the effect of her words. The sale will be processed by me personally. The three salesmen involved in this regrettable episode will naturally be excluded from the corresponding commission. The punishment was severe. On a sale of that magnitude, the commission would represent several months' salary for each of them. Tyler turned even paler, while Edward clenched his fists tightly. Richard maintained a mask of indifference, but a pulsing vein in his temple betrayed his contained fury. Elizabeth then turned to Arthur. Mr. Jenkins, on behalf of Ferrari, I offer you my sincere apologies for the unacceptable treatment you received today. Would you like to say a few words to our employees? Arthur nodded and took a step forward. Despite the simplicity of his clothes, there was a natural dignity in his posture that everyone could now clearly see. For 50 years of my life, he began in a calm but firm voice, I was invisible. As a construction helper, as a delivery man, as a small shop owner, people looked right through me. They didn't see me as a person, just a function. He looked directly at the three salesmen. The true worth of a person isn't in the clothes they wear, the car they drive, or the neighborhood they live in. It's in their character. Arthur walked slowly through the showroom, passing between the gleaming cars. I never traded my board shorts and flip-flops for expensive suits, because I never forgot where I came from. My feet remain on the ground, even when my company builds skyscrapers. He stopped in front of the three humiliated salesmen. You lost a big sale today, not because you failed to recognize my money, but because you failed to recognize my humanity. And that, gentleman, is the real reason you will not achieve true success, no matter how many cars you sell. The silence was absolute. Some employees had tears in their eyes. The receptionist discreetly wiped away a tear. Elizabeth resumed. We will now go to my office to finalize the details of the sale. Mr. Jenkins, please follow me. As they were about to leave, Arthur turned. Before that, I'd like a few minutes alone with these three young men, if possible. Elizabeth hesitated but agreed with a nod. Of course, you can use the VIP lounge. I'll be waiting in my office when you're finished. The other employees dispersed, reluctantly returning to their duties, still processing what they had witnessed. Richard, Edward, and Tyler followed Arthur to the VIP lounge like condemned men on their way to the gallows. Once inside the room with the door closed, Arthur motioned for them to sit. The three obeyed in silence, avoiding his gaze. I want to tell you another story, Arthur said, remaining standing. 30 years ago, when my company was just starting, I needed a loan to expand. At the time, we only had 12 employees and 3 trucks. I went to a large national bank dressed exactly as I am today, board shorts and flip-flops. He smiled at the memory. The manager didn't even let me sit down. He said I was in the wrong place, that his bank was for real businessmen, not weekend construction workers, his exact words. The three men were looking at him now, curiosity overcoming their embarrassment. I left there devastated, humiliated, but on the way home I passed a Bank of America. I went in still in my board shorts and flip-flops. The manager there, a man named Charles Smith, didn't care about my clothes. He talked with me for 2 hours about my plans, my vision for the company. By the end of the afternoon, I left with the loan approved. Arthur sat down, looking into the eyes of each salesman. That loan was what allowed Jenkins Construction to grow and become what it is today. And do you know what happened to that manager who humiliated me? 5 years later, his bank went bankrupt during the crisis. He ended up coming to my company looking for a job. Edward swallowed hard, visibly disturbed by the story. "And you hired him?" asked Tyler, almost in a whisper. "I did. He started in the finance department and stayed there for 15 years until he retired. I never mentioned our first meeting, but I'm sure he remembered. Life has a way of being ironic." Richard, who had maintained a defensive posture until then, finally spoke. "Why are you telling us this?" "Because you are making the same mistake he made, judging people by their appearance and losing valuable opportunities. Not just business opportunities, but opportunities for personal growth." Arthur stood up, adjusting his floral board shorts. "Director Monroe is probably going to fire you. She has every right given the history of complaints." The three men exchanged distressed glances. "But I'm going to ask her to give you one last chance." The surprise was unanimous. Edward was the first to react. "Why?" "After what we said to you. Because I'd rather be remembered for generosity now that I have some power than for revenge. Besides," he added with a discreet smile, "everyone deserves the opportunity to learn from their mistakes." Arthur headed for the door, but before opening it, he turned one last time. "Oh, and that tip you gave me about the beach shop? I actually own a chain of them. Golden Coast Outfitters, ever heard of it? We have 47 stores across the state." Leaving the three salesmen completely stunned, Arthur left the VIP lounge and headed to Elizabeth's office to complete the purchase of the vehicles. In the regional director's elegantly decorated office, the final details of the sale were being discussed. Arthur had just inserted his black card into the reader for the 30% down payment, approximately $720,000. "The vehicles will be available in 3 weeks," Elizabeth explained as Arthur signed the documents. "We can arrange a special delivery if you wish." "That would be perfect," Arthur replied. "I'm planning a surprise for my children at the company's anniversary party." "About those three," Elizabeth began with a serious expression. "Don't fire them," Arthur interrupted. "Not yet, at least." Elizabeth raised her eyebrows, surprised. "Are you sure? This wasn't an isolated incident, as I explained." "I'm sure. Everyone deserves a second chance. Or maybe a third in their case." He smiled. "Besides, I want them to be present when I come to pick up the cars." "As you wish," Elizabeth agreed, still uncertain. "But they will be on probation and will definitively lose the commission from this sale." "Fair enough," Arthur nodded. When all the documents were signed and the payment processed, Elizabeth escorted Arthur to the exit. On the way, they passed through the main showroom, where the three salesmen had returned, and now with grim expressions. "By the way," Arthur said to the group, loud enough for all to hear, "I'll need full insurance coverage for all 3 vehicles. Who here handles that?" A young employee from the administrative area timidly raised her hand. "I handle the insurance, Mr. Jenkins." "Excellent. Contact me tomorrow to discuss the details." He handed her a card with his personal number, completely ignoring the envious looks from the 3 salesmen, who realized they had just lost another substantial commission. At the dealership door, Elizabeth asked one last question. "Mr. Jenkins, if I may be curious, why did the 3 cars have to be exactly these models?" Arthur smiled, looking up at the sunny Los Angeles sky. "Because they're the most beautiful," he replied simply, "and because I want my children to have the best." With a final wave, he left the dealership, quickly blending into the crowd moving along the avenue. Elizabeth watched his simple figure disappear among hurried executives and luxury cars, marveling at the story she had just witnessed. That same night, in East Los Angeles, Arthur walked the familiar streets of Boyle Heights. Despite it being one of the humblest neighborhoods in the area, It was where he had chosen to remain even after his financial success. His house, though comfortable and renovated over the years, kept the same simple facade as its neighbors. There were no high walls or ostentatious security systems, just a discreet alarm and cameras installed at his children's insistence. "Mr. Jenkins." "Mr. Jenkins!" A child's voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Pedro, a 10-year-old boy who lived 2 houses down. "Hey, champ! How was school today?" Arthur crouched down to the boy's level, ignoring the protest from his aging knees. "I got an A in math," Pedro announced proudly, showing his test paper. "Excellent. I knew you could do it." Arthur took a $20 bill from his wallet. "Here you go, as promised. A grade above a B+, a special prize." Pedro accepted the money, his eyes shining. "I'll save half for college, like you taught me." "That's my boy. You can spend the other half on ice cream or a game. You deserve it." Saying goodbye to the boy, Arthur continued on his way to the corner diner, the same one where he'd had coffee for over 4 decades. Upon entering the simple but impeccably clean establishment, he was warmly greeted by Maria, the owner. "The usual, Mr. Jenkins." "The usual, Maria." He sat at his usual table, the third from the left, near the window overlooking the street. In minutes, Maria brought his coffee with milk and 2 slices of buttered toast. "So how did it go at the fancy dealership? Did you get the cars for the kids?" Arthur smiled. Maria was one of the few people who knew his plan. "I got them. They'll be delivered on the day of the company party." "And did the big shots there treat you well? Or did they turn up their noses at your board shorts?" she asked, sitting across from him as she did every day at this quieter time. "It was just as I imagined," he replied, taking a sip of coffee. "But the director was quite a lady. Handled the situation with class. I bet those stuck-up salesmen's jaws dropped when they found out who you are." Maria laughed, imagining the scene. "Maria, I've never understood this habit of judging people by their clothes. When I was a construction helper, carrying cement bags on my back all day, my money wasn't worth any less than anyone else's. It's just that some people need to step on others to feel big, Mr. Jenkins. You're not like that. That's why you succeeded in life without losing your humility." As they talked, the television in the corner of the diner showed the local news. A report caught Arthur's attention. It showed the construction of the new East LA Community Hospital, a Jenkins construction project. "Look there, Mr. Jenkins. It's your project." He watched the images with a discreet smile. The project was ahead of schedule, and the report highlighted that, unlike other public projects in the city, this one was strictly following the timeline. The reporter interviewed Lucas, his eldest son, who as chief engineer explained the technical details. "Mr. Lucas looks just like you when you were younger," Maria commented. "He has the same way of speaking, all technical, but without that engineering arrogance. He started by carrying bricks on sites, you know. All my children started from the bottom. I made sure of it, and that's why they're good bosses now. They respect the workers." Finished with his coffee, Arthur paid, leaving a generous tip as always, and said goodbye to Maria. Instead of heading home, however, he turned left and walked a few more blocks until he reached an empty lot surrounded by a worn-out fence. It was an abandoned lot, covered in tall weeds and trash. Arthur stopped in front of it, staring intently through an opening in the fence. Any passerby who saw him there might find it strange for an elderly man to contemplate a vacant lot with such intensity. But for Arthur, that wasn't just an empty lot. It was where the small unfinished brick house where he grew up had once stood. The 2-room house that his father, in his moments of sobriety, had built little by little, brick by brick. The same house where his mother washed clothes for others and where he slept on a mat on the floor. "I thought I'd find you here." The familiar voice made Arthur turn. It was Mark, his middle son, the company's financial officer. Tall, with discreet glasses and a well-cut suit, he seemed out of place in this simple part of town. "How did you know where to find me?" Mark smiled. "Dad, whenever something important happens in your life, you come here. It's like you need to reconnect with your roots." Arthur nodded, touched by his son's perception. "I bought 3 Ferraris today." Mark's eyes widened, genuinely surprised. "You did what?" "That story I always told, about the yellow Ferrari when I was a construction helper. Remember?" "Of course I remember. You promised that one day you'd have 3 yellow Ferraris, one for each child you dreamed of having." Exactly. Well, I finally did it. Mark was silent for a few moments, processing the information. Dad, you didn't have to. I mean, those are incredibly expensive cars and you've always been so frugal. It's not about need, son. It's about a promise. Arthur looked back at the vacant lot. When you grow up like this, with nothing, and you make a promise to yourself, that promise becomes almost a religion. The two stood side by side, observing the lot in silence for a few minutes. Do you know what I plan to do with this lot? Arthur finally asked. I have no idea. I bought it last month. The owner didn't even know who I was, that I was born here. I'm going to build a free technical school to train young people in construction, electrical, plumbing, trades that can give them what it gave me, a chance to change their lives. Mark smiled, putting an arm around his father's shoulders. You never stop surprising us, do you? You spend millions on Ferraris for us, but your real gift is for people you don't even know. You three already have everything you need, Arthur replied simply. This school will be my legacy. The next day, the routine at the Ferrari dealership was seemingly back to normal, but a tense atmosphere hung in the air. The three salesmen, Richard, Edward, and Tyler, had been called into Elizabeth's office first thing for a definitive conversation. You are on probation, she announced coldly. Any complaints, any prejudiced attitude towards customers, and it will be immediate termination. Richard, who had always been the most arrogant, now maintained a more subdued posture. Edward seemed genuinely repentant, while Tyler, the youngest, was visibly shaken by the whole situation. We want to thank you for the chance to stay, said Edward, speaking for the three. We learned an important lesson yesterday. Don't thank me, Elizabeth replied. Thank Mr. Jenkins. He was the one who interceded for you, even after the deplorable treatment he received. At that same moment, in an elegant meeting room in LA's financial district, Arthur Jenkins was in a meeting with his executive team. He wore his usual style, board shorts, a t-shirt, and Havaianas, his trademark. The only concession he made was wearing a polo shirt for more formal meetings with external clients. The hospital project is 5 days ahead of schedule, Lucas, his eldest son, presented, showing detailed charts on the screen. If we keep this pace, we'll deliver 3 weeks early. And the budget? Arthur asked. Ryan, the youngest, took over the presentation. We are 2% under budget, thanks to the modifications we made to the plumbing design. We managed to maintain quality while reducing waste. Arthur nodded, satisfied. The meeting continued with technical discussions about other ongoing projects. At the end, as everyone was getting up to leave, he asked his 3 sons to stay. So, Dad, Lucas began when they were alone. Mark told us about the Ferraris. Arthur smiled. There were no secrets between his sons. It was supposed to be a surprise. And it still will be, assured Ryan, the family architect. We're surprised by the gesture, not the gift itself. Dad, intervened Mark, the pragmatic financier, are you sure? That's almost $2.4 million. Arthur leaned back in his chair, observing the 3 men before him. He saw in them the best of himself, but also qualities he never had. Formal education, refinement, fluency in other languages. Still, he was proud that despite all that, they kept their feet on the ground. Do you remember that old photo I always carry in my wallet, the one with the yellow Ferrari? The 3 nodded. The story of that photo was almost a family legend. That promise I made to myself when I was 19 was what motivated me in the toughest times. When the company almost went bankrupt in 1999, when we lost that major bid in 2005, when we faced that lawsuit in 2010. That promise was what I held on to. He paused, looking out the panoramic window at the Los Angeles skyline, dotted with skyscrapers, several of them built by his company. Now, at 69, I can finally fulfill it. And there is nothing that gives me more satisfaction than to gift it to you 3, who turned an individual dream into a collective achievement. Lucas, always the most pragmatic, still seemed unsure. Dad, you know we don't need Ferraris, right? We're perfectly happy with our current cars. Arthur laughed. I know. That's exactly why you deserve them. You never demanded anything, always worked hard, never flaunted wealth. Consider this not as a gift for you to use, but as a symbol of what we've built together." Ryan, the most sentimental of the three, had tears in his eyes. "Thanks, Dad. It's an incredible gesture." "By the way," Arthur added, "the delivery will be during the company anniversary party next month. It will be a surprise for all the employees too." The brothers exchanged knowing glances, as if sharing a secret. "What is it?" Arthur asked, noticing the exchange. Mark cleared his throat. "Well, Dad, we were also preparing a surprise for the company anniversary." "What surprise?" "If we tell you, it won't be a surprise," Ryan smiled. "But I believe we can coordinate the two events so one doesn't overshadow the other." Arthur agreed, intrigued but respecting the mystery his sons maintained. In the following weeks, preparations for the 35th anniversary of Jenkins' construction moved forward at full steam. The event would be held at the construction site of the future East LA Community Hospital, a symbolic choice Arthur had insisted on despite suggestions for more sophisticated venues. "Our company was born on construction sites," he had explained to the organizing team. "That's where we will celebrate our history." Meanwhile, at the Ferrari dealership, the three chosen cars were being meticulously prepared. The red F8, the metallic blue Portofino, and the yellow 812 Superfast were receiving their final technical and aesthetic adjustments for delivery. Richard, Edward, and Tyler, the three salesmen on probation, had been behaving impeccably since the incident. The trio had asked to work specifically on preparing Arthur's vehicles as a way of making amends for their inadequate treatment. "I've never seen you so dedicated to a sale that won't earn you a commission," Elizabeth commented upon finding them personally polishing the F8's wheels. "It's not about the commission," Edward replied, surprising the director. "It's about what we learned." Tyler, the youngest, added, "Mr. Jenkins could have destroyed our careers, but he chose to give us a second chance. The least we can do is ensure his cars are absolutely perfect." "I received a call from him yesterday," Elizabeth revealed. "He requested a change in the delivery. Instead of picking up the vehicles here and taking them to the party, he asked us to transport them directly to the event location." Richard, who had remained silent until then, finally spoke up. "Can we do that personally? Transport the cars and participate in the delivery?" Elizabeth studied him with curiosity. "Why?" "Because we want to apologize publicly," he explained, surprising even his colleagues with his newfound humility. "Mr. Jenkins deserves that. And besides..." He hesitated. "Besides?" Elizabeth prompted. "Besides, I think we all need this final lesson. To see the reaction of his employees when they find out their boss, who wears board shorts and flip-flops, bought 3 Ferraris for his sons." Elizabeth pondered for a moment, then nodded. "I'll speak with him. But you know you won't get the commission, right? That won't change." "We're not doing this for the commission," Edward reaffirmed. "We're doing it for the lesson." In the week of the big party, the activity at the Jenkins construction headquarters was intense. Employees from all departments were involved in the preparations, dividing their time between their usual duties and tasks related to the event. In his simple office, Arthur had always refused the idea of an ostentatious presidential suite. The company's founder reviewed the final details of the plan he had arranged with the dealership. The delivery of the Ferraris would be the high point of the celebration, the moment when he would finally fulfill the promise made to himself half a century earlier. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he replied, quickly putting the dealership documents into a folder. Mrs. Wallace, his secretary for over 20 years, entered with a worried expression. "Mr. Jenkins, I just received a call from St. Dow. Joseph's Hospital, it's about Maria from the diner." Arthur's expression changed instantly. "What happened?" "She had a fall and had to be admitted. It seems she got dizzy while working and fell, hitting her head. She's conscious, but they're keeping her for observation for 24 hours. Without hesitation, Arthur stood up. "Cancel my appointments for the afternoon. I'm going to visit her now." "But, Mr. Jenkins, you have that meeting with the mall investors." "Mark can handle it. Maria is more important." An hour later, Arthur entered the hospital room where his longtime friend was resting. At 73, Maria still had a sparkle in her eye despite the bandage on her forehead and her weary appearance. "Look who came to visit me," she exclaimed upon seeing him, "the busiest man in Los Angeles." Arthur smiled, placing a basket of fruit and chocolates he'd bought at the hospital gift shop on the bedside table. "How are you feeling, Maria?" "It was just a scare. These overly dramatic doctors want to keep me trapped here. I'm going back to my diner tomorrow." He sat in the chair next to the bed. "What happened exactly?" "Nonsense. I stood up too fast after grabbing a pan from the oven. Got dizzy, slipped and hit my head on the counter. It wasn't even hard, but the blood scared everyone and they called an ambulance." Arthur studied her with concern. "Have you been eating right? Sleeping well? Getting your regular checkups?" Maria laughed. "Look who's talking. The man who lives on toast and coffee. I'm serious, Maria. You work too hard at that diner. It's time for you to retire. Let your son take over the business." She sighed. "Marcos has his own life, Arthur. He's a university professor. He doesn't want anything to do with a diner. Then hire a manager, reduce your hours. You don't need to be there from 5 in the morning until 8 at night every day. And what would I do at home alone? Watch soap operas? No, thank you. I'd rather die working." Arthur winced at the word die. "Don't talk like that. You still have a lot of living to do." A comfortable silence settled between them, the kind of silence only decades-long friendships allow. "Are you coming to the company party?" he finally asked. "Of course I am. I've already picked out my good dress and everything. It's not every day you celebrate 35 years of a company that started with an old truck delivering sand." The day of the 35th anniversary celebration for Jenkins Construction finally arrived. The construction site of the East LA Community Hospital had been transformed for the event. A large white tent covered the central area, decorated with panels telling the company's history through old photographs. In one, a young Arthur was seen next to his first truck, a used vehicle he had refurbished himself. In another, the small building supply store that was the seed of the empire he had built. The 800 employees arrived in waves, many accompanied by their families. There were engineers and architects, as well as bricklayers and construction helpers, all treated with the same respect and consideration that was a hallmark of the company's culture. In a discreet corner, protected by a special tarp, 3 Ferrari transport trucks awaited the right moment to reveal their precious cargo. Richard, Edward, and Tyler, the 3 salesmen from the dealership, personally supervised the final preparations for the big surprise. "Do you think he'll like it?" asked Tyler, nervous. "He already bought the cars. Of course he'll like it," replied Edward, adjusting the tarp to ensure no one could peek underneath. Richard, who had gone from arrogant to reflective since the incident at the store, watched the movement of the Jenkins employees with interest. "Look how they all seem to genuinely enjoy working here. It's not that fake corporate enthusiasm you see at other companies. Indeed, the atmosphere was one of genuine camaraderie. Workers embraced their superiors without ceremony. Engineers chatted casually with secretaries. Directors served themselves in the same buffet line as drivers." "It's incredible," Richard continued. "The man built not just a financial empire, but a place where people actually like to work." From a distance, the 3 watched Arthur arrive, accompanied by his 3 sons. As always, he wore his board shorts, t-shirt, and flip-flops. Only this time, in a concession to the event's formality, the shorts were new and the t-shirt bore the company's 35th anniversary commemorative logo. "He really doesn't care about appearances, does he?" Tyler commented with admiration. "That's why he can see beyond them," Richard replied thoughtfully. The celebration began with an emotional speech from Arthur. Without formalities or prepared texts, he spoke from the heart about the company's journey, thanking each department, mentioning employees by name, and recalling challenges overcome collectively. "Nobody builds anything alone," he stated, his voice thick with emotion. "Every building we've raised, every bridge we've opened, every road we've paved is the result of the collective work of hundreds of hands. Jenkins Construction isn't mine, it's ours." The applause was deafening. Many longtime employees had tears in their eyes. "But today," Arthur continued, "I want to give special thanks to 3 people who transformed my individual dream into a family project. My sons, Lucas, Mark, and Ryan." The 3 young men took the stage, visibly emotional. "When I founded this company, I dreamed of creating something I could pass on to my children. More than a business, I wanted to leave a legacy of values: hard work, honesty, respect for people regardless of their position. These three men not only understood those values, they expanded them, bringing new perspectives, technical knowledge, and above all, heart to everything we do. Arthur paused, looking directly at his sons. Therefore, today I want to give them a surprise that represents the fulfillment of a promise I made to myself exactly 50 years ago. On that cue, the tarps covering the three transport trucks were removed simultaneously, revealing the luxury vehicles: the red F8, the metallic blue Portofino, and the yellow 812 Superfast. A murmur of astonishment swept through the crowd. The employees looked incredulously at the cars, and then at their boss in board shorts and flip-flops. 50 years ago, Arthur explained, as the truck ramps lowered and the cars were carefully positioned, I was working as a construction helper on a mansion. The owner arrived in a yellow Ferrari, and at that moment, I promised myself that one day I would buy 3 cars just like it, one for each child I dreamed of having. The 3 cars were now fully visible, gleaming in the sun. Richard, Edward, and Tyler positioned themselves discreetly beside the vehicles, holding the keys. It took 5 decades of hard work, of saving, of constant reinvestment in the company. I never cared about luxuries for myself. I still wear my board shorts and flip-flops. I still live in the same neighborhood. I still have coffee at Maria's diner. He pointed to the elderly woman watching the scene emotionally from the front row. But today, at 69, I can finally fulfill that 19-year-old's dream. Lucas, Mark, Ryan, these cars are for you. The 3 brothers stood frozen in surprise. Although they knew about the purchase, they hadn't expected such a public, emotional presentation. It was Mark who reacted first, approaching his father. "Dad, this is incredible, but we also have a surprise for you." Arthur frowned, confused. "You do?" Ryan gave a signal, and a large screen lit up at the back of the stage, displaying an image of a lot, the same vacant lot where Arthur's childhood home had been and which he had recently purchased. "We know about your plans to build a technical school on the lot where you were born," Lucas explained. "We decided to fast-track that dream." On the screen, the image of the vacant lot transformed into a digital model of a modern educational complex, the Margaret Jenkins Technical School, Arthur's mother's name. "We've already obtained all the permits," Mark continued. "The designs are approved, the bidding is complete. Construction begins next week. And that's not all," Ryan added. "We've created a foundation to ensure the school is self-sustaining. 5% of Jenkins Construction's annual profit will be permanently directed to keep the school running, offering free training to young people from the inner city." Arthur was speechless, his eyes welling with tears. The entire crowd waited in respectful silence for his reaction. You did this?" "We did," Lucas confirmed. "Because you taught us that true success isn't about owning things, but about transforming lives." It was too much for Arthur. For the first time in decades, the always composed man let the tears flow freely down his face. He hugged his 3 sons in one motion, as the employees applauded emotionally. When he finally recovered, Arthur returned to the microphone. "It seems we're all full of surprises today," he smiled. "But there's one more group of people who deserve recognition for making this possible." He gestured, and Richard, Edward, and Tyler approached timidly, carrying the car keys. "These gentlemen are from the Ferrari dealership," Arthur introduced them. "And they have an interesting story to share." Richard stepped forward, clearly nervous. "When Mr. Jenkins entered our store, wearing board shorts and flip-flops, we judged him by his appearance. We made the worst mistake a professional can make, assuming we knew a person's worth based on their attire." Edward continued, "He could have reported us, demanded our firing. Instead, he taught us a lesson in humility and gave us a second chance. It was the most valuable lesson of our careers," completed Tyler, handing the Portofino key to Mark. Edward handed the F8 key to Lucas, while Richard, with a genuine respect he had never shown before, handed the key to the yellow 812 Superfast to Ryan. "The yellow one is special," Arthur commented, "like the Ferrari I saw 50 years ago." Then, to everyone's surprise, Richard asked for the microphone. "We have one last request, Mr. Jenkins. We'd like you to be the first to drive the yellow car, to complete the circle." Arthur looked at the luxury vehicle, then at his worn flip-flops and smiled. "I think we can break protocol." As he walked to the car accompanied by his 3 sons, he whispered to Ryan, "I bet they've never seen anyone drive a Ferrari in flip-flops." The 812 Superfast's engine roared to life as Arthur turned the key. With reverent care, he maneuvered the vehicle through the open space on the construction site, doing a full lap as everyone applauded. His eyes shone with a satisfaction that went far beyond material achievement. It was the completion of a life cycle, the fulfillment of a promise made to the young man he once was. When he parked again, his 3 sons were already positioned by the other cars. As if in a silent choreography, the 4 of them got into the vehicles simultaneously, Lucas in the F8, Mark in the Portofino, Ryan taking the 812 Superfast, and Arthur sitting beside him in the passenger seat. The Italian engines roared in unison, creating a mechanical symphony that echoed across the construction site. Slowly, the 3 cars began a parade around the perimeter of the future hospital, passing in front of the amazed employees. Maria, standing despite her recent accident, wiped away tears as she watched her friend of decades finally realize the dream he had so often mentioned in their morning chats at the diner. When the cars finally stopped, Arthur got out and made one last announcement into the microphone. "Next month, we will lay the cornerstone for the Margaret Jenkins Technical School. Everyone is invited. And yes, I will still be wearing board shorts and flip-flops to the ceremony." Laughter and applause ended the speech. As the party continued with music and celebration, Richard, Edward, and Tyler approached Arthur to say goodbye. "Thank you for the lesson, Mr. Jenkins," Richard said with sincerity. "You've changed our perspective forever." "It wasn't me," Arthur replied simply. "It was life, showing you what really matters." Later that night, with the celebration over and most of the guests gone, Arthur sat in a quiet corner of the construction site. His 3 sons, now officially Ferrari owners, joined him. "So, Dad?" Lucas asked. "How does it feel to have fulfilled your 50-year-old dream?" Arthur contemplated the question, observing the full moon that illuminated the skeleton of the future hospital. "You know what's interesting? I fulfilled the dream, but I discovered the real dream wasn't the cars." "No?" questioned Mark. "No. The real dream was to raise children who understood the value of building something bigger than themselves. And you 3, he paused, emotional. "You surpassed any expectation I could have ever had." Ryan, the most emotional of the 3, hugged his father. "So what do we do now? With the school underway and the cars bought, what's the next challenge?" Arthur smiled, adjusting his inseparable Havaianas on his feet. "The next challenge is to keep being who we are. To keep building not just buildings, but lives. To keep remembering that true worth is in character, not in possessions." Lucas stood up, offering a hand to help his father do the same. "Let's go home. We have a busy day tomorrow." "Let's go," Arthur agreed. "But first I need to stop by Maria's diner to thank her for coming, even after her accident." "At 6 a.m. as always?" Mark asked, smiling. "As always," Arthur confirmed. "Some things never change, like my board shorts, my flip-flops, and my breakfast at the neighborhood diner." As they walked to the parking area, where the 3 Ferraris gleamed under the moonlight, Arthur stopped for a moment, looking up at the starry Los Angeles sky. "You know what real wealth is?" he asked, more to himself than to his sons. "It's being able to wear flip-flops and board shorts, even when you have the money to buy 3 Ferraris." The 4 of them laughed, getting into the luxurious vehicles. Curiously, even sitting on the Italian leather seat of the yellow Superfast, Arthur seemed perfectly at ease with his Havaianas flip-flops and his floral board shorts. Because in the end, it wasn't the clothes that defined the man, but his actions and his character. And as the small convoy of Italian supercars crossed the outskirts of Los Angeles towards the simple house where Arthur insisted on living, the neighborhood residents waved, recognizing not the luxury vehicles, but the man in flip-flops who had never forgotten his roots. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Arthur Jenkins and his Havaianas flip-flops touched your hearts. To continue this emotional journey, we've prepared a special playlist with equally inspiring stories about people who maintained their essence despite success. Find it here by clicking on the left. If you enjoyed this narrative about humility and genuine values, be sure to subscribe to our channel and give the video a like. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexities of American life, from the inner cities to the skyscrapers. Share in the comments if you've ever witnessed situations where someone was unfairly judged by their appearance. Your experiences enrich our community and remind us that, like Mr. Jenkins, true worth lies in character, not in the clothes we wear. Until the next story.